I've been given the task of publishing a paper in a high-index journal, and I'm not sure exactly what that means. I'm fundamentally going to talk about manuscript writing. A lot of what I have to say will be a little bit of a repeat of what Dr. Oyuseku presented, but most certainly looking at it from a different angle. All journals are not alike. World Neurosurgery has special sections like the ones listed here that are somewhat different than, say, Neurosurgery or a Journal of Neurosurgery. The one in particular, which caters to the international audience of neurosurgeons, is doing more with less. And I just show you an example of a very creative author who fashioned dissecting tools basically in his own shop at home. Dr. Oyuseku emphasized brevity, and I have a couple of quotes here that further emphasize such. Mark Twain said, "I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead." And Blaise Pascal said, "I have made this longer than usual because I have not had time to make it shorter." So let's talk about a properly manuscript. And please understand that the vast majority of, or the majority of manuscripts that all editor-in-chiefs receive are not properly constructed. They consist of all of these components, as Dr. Oyuseku discussed, and I emphasize the potential use of subheadings in the introduction, but particularly the methods, results, and discussion sections. Organize your thoughts before you write the paper. Create an outline and use the outline as a mechanism to define your subheadings. The subheadings cause the author to compartmentalize. One of the most difficult things that young authors grapple with is the putting information that should be in the discussion in the results section and rambling a bit with their manuscript. If you have subheadings and you compartmentalize things, you can actually take them away before you submit if you like, but it causes you to put everything in the position it should be in within the manuscript. Please remember that the reader is not familiar with the subject at hand. Make them familiar, but don't waste words. Tell them what they need to know, not everything you know. Another common mistake with young authors is putting in information that the readership already knows, and that is wasteful and does not fit in with Dr. Oyuseku's plea for brevity. So I'm going to talk about each one of these components separately. The title. The title should be a sparkling diamond. It should attract attention of the reader who is perusing a journal, who will select your article to read based solely, at least initially, on the title. The abstract is a summary. It catches the eye. It should be catchy or sensational if appropriate, but informative and descriptive. A clear message should be sent, and it should sustain attention. So the reader has looked at the title and the abstract and says, okay, I want to read the manuscript. The introduction asks the question, why? Describe the problem, explain why that problem is important. Next, briefly review what has been done so far to solve the problem. And then finally, introduce the study by pointing out what is different about it compared to prior research. The materials or methods section answers the question how. Include enough detail so that others can repeat the experiment, provide relevant details, describe treatment and control groups. And this is an easy section to write first, hence begin here when you're writing your manuscript. Results answers the question, what? State only the results in the results section. Comments and explanations belong in discussion. The results section can be short. Much information can be presented in tables and or figures. Do not duplicate data presentation, i.e. in text, graph, and tables. The discussion answers the most important question, so what? Expound upon the results. Point out the importance of the data presented. Compare the results with prior publications. Explain contradictory results, if any. Discuss statistical significance and chance, if appropriate. Discuss generalizability. Outline the limitations of your study. Suggest a future line of work, if appropriate. And finally, sum up with the conclusion, which should not overstate what has been presented in the paper. It should be derived from the data presented and the data presented only. It should be rational, and it should be useful, applicable, and novel. Not sufficient to present. It is not sufficient to present a large number of patients. There are two types of plagiarism, which is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. There is innocent and malicious plagiarism. Please keep in mind that all major journals use some sort of cross-check mechanism to look for phrases, sentences, and words that are used in prior publications. Here we see a significant amount of the manuscript having been highlighted that was taken directly from the author's prior work. And so more often than not, sometimes this can be malicious, like duplicate publications, publishing an article that has already been published by the same authors. But it is often a manifestation of the author being a non-English first language individual. And so they struggle with the English language and find paragraphs or sentences that look good, copy them, and they copy them and paste them. Please do not do that. You may get this message from me. If you do, there are many uncited phrases and sentences that are taken from prior publications. This precludes submission for review in its current form. Hence, the manuscript is rejected. Pre-review, the authors are encouraged to rewrite in their own words with English editorial assistance and resubmit to the World Neurosurgery or elsewhere. Of particularly note is the words with English editorial assistance. If I feel, and the section editors feel, that the manuscript is appropriate for publication, but it just is not readable because of poor English, we offer a service provided by medical students and junior neurosurgery residents who will evaluate a manuscript, not for content, but only for English grammar and usage. Usage, grammar, and syntax are words that are frequently employed when discussing an improperly written manuscript. Grammatical refers to anything that has to do with sentences, punctuation, or the correct way to write or speak a language. Usage is the way in which words or phrases are actually used, spoken, or written in a speech community. And syntax is the way in which linguistic elements, such as words, are put together to form the constituents, such as phrases or clauses. I became acutely aware of the nuances of this when visiting Russia and several years ago, and several neurosurgeons asked me to help them with a manuscript. And I saw that they were writing in English, but using Russian sentence structure. And this is a very difficult obstacle to overcome. And it can be overcome, though, with assistance, as I outlined. I refer you to 3 books. One is Strunk and White, The Elements of Style. It is a simple little book that basically outlines all the rules of writing. There's another book by Stephen King, the author, on writing. And it is a superb book, and it illustrates how he takes thoughts and images from his brain and puts them into a manuscript or a chapter or a book and makes it flow. And then the Cormac McCarthy, who is the author of No Country for Old Men and many other works, and a professional writer, if you will, outlines some very relevant recommendations regarding publication. Use minimalism. You've heard that about 5 times today to achieve clarity. Remove extra words or commas whenever you can. Decide on your paper's theme and 2 or 3 points you want every reader to remember. If something isn't needed to help the reader to understand the main theme, omit it. Limit each paragraph to a single message. I think that goes along with compartmentalization and doing an outline up front. Keep sentences short, simply constructed, and direct. Try to avoid jargon, buzzwords, or overly technical language, and don't use the same word repeatedly. It's boring. Don't over elaborate, only use an adjective if it's relevant. Don't say the same thing in 3 different ways in a single section. Choose concrete language and examples. When you think you're done, read your work aloud to yourself or a friend. Find a good editor you can trust and who will spend real time and thought on your work. I say, read it to yourself, preferably aloud. You see things that you don't see when you just go over the manuscript again. Finally, try to write the best version of your paper, the one that you like. You can't please an anonymous reader, but you should be at least able to please yourself. And when you make your writing more lively and easier to understand, people will want to invest their time in reading your work. From the journal's perspective, we have thresholds. For example, World Neurosurgery does not any longer accept case reports. Case reports have unique information, rare, not uncommon cases, and unique lessons learned. But they've got to be good to be published anywhere. And we have decided to not publish case reports. The manuscripts must be of archival value. When you revise a manuscript, address all comments in a revised manuscript in the text of the manuscript in red or track changes or in some way. Do not argue with the reviewers. Editors and reviewers despise arguments. Address them, make comments, have a collegial dialogue. What if your manuscript is rejected? Well, what was your motivation? Is this work worthy of dissemination? Have I optimally prepared the manuscript? Do I trash it? Do I resubmit or submit elsewhere? Bottom line, heed the critiques. The reviewers are professionals and experts in the field. Take them very seriously, honestly self-assess. If you resubmit, heed the critiques. Plagiarism, one last shot at that. Be very careful to watch for misrepresentation or not misrepresent your data, and try to avoid conclusion-based research. Conclusion-based research is research that is designed to prove a point. And there's a ton of bias that can be introduced when that is done. And again, there are 2 types, in my opinion, of plagiarism. Innocent, which we've already discussed, and malicious, which we have discussed. Malicious is intentional and overt plagiarism, the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as their own. Conclusion-based research as is often hypothesis driven, and process-based research is designed to find the truth, exploratory inquiry. Conclusion-based research uses frequentist probability strategies, and process or based research or exploratory inquiry uses Bayesian probability strategies. Try to seek the truth. There is so much information that is subsequently found to be not true or false, and there's a growing literature on false findings. The truth wears off, and most of us are aware of Scott's parabola, where an idea is had. Studies are done that are biased, conclusion-based research. It gathers momentum, and the strategy becomes a standard of treatment. But then some authors start to look at this and cannot reproduce the data. Then more and more data is shown that the manuscript, the original manuscripts were false, and it falls into oblivion. The area under this curve is huge, and there can be, particularly if this is regarding industry studies, can be very harmful and financially devastating and lucrative for the various sides of the coin. The peer review process, manuscripts are peer reviewed, letters to the editor are not. They're only reviewed by me. An expedited review, sometimes people ask for this, has two components. Editorial peer review is not altered. The production process is what is streamlined. You need a clear definition of the peer review process. Each journal must have that, which is mandatory. Now, I not infrequently get letters, angry letters from authors who have been rejected by scholarly reviewers and section editors. I make this statement: all authors feel that their manuscript is worthy of publication, every single one of them. Unfortunately, World Neurosurgery and other neurosurgery journals reject nearly 80% of submitted manuscripts. So obviously, the majority of authors are wrong, at least in the opinion of the experts. Thank you very much.